Religious and responsible human beings. This is one of the main reasons why we read the Torah year after year, parsha after parsha. Why so many community members come and take an aliyah, lane in aliyah. The names of our ancestors, the founding fathers and mothers of the earth resonate. And through this week's parsha, Parshat Noach, we come into contact with a special human being before there was a Jewish people, before there were Jews. Religious and responsible. That's how I see Noah, called Ish Tzaddik, a righteous soul, a righteous man. You know, when he was called a righteous man, an Ish Tzaddik, the Torah qualified that and said, Bedorotav. He was righteous in his generation. And of course, Rashi, whom is considered to be the central and foundational Torah commentator of our people, whose commentary we're studying this year at Or Zarua, points out that there was a machloket, there was a Talmudic disagreement about whether or not Noah was called a tzaddik, a righteous person in his generation, bedorotav, as a matter of being praiseworthy and calling him out as being a tzaddik above and beyond any other righteous souls of his time or any other, or whether or not that was a little bit of a stick in the rib, whether or not it was lignai as opposed to shevach, whether or not it was to disparage his character in the sense that Rashi brings the Talmudic understanding. If he were alive in the time of Abraham, Noah would not have been considered a tzaddik. Now, these comparisons assume a baseline kind of morality. As we studied the Torah this past Monday with the commentary of Rashi, Charlie and I dialogued about whether or not there needs to be a baseline morality to which we compare our forefathers and foremothers of the Torah. But given the sense that each generation embraces its own challenge, faces its own dilemmas, and uses God-given resources to respond to both disaster and create possibility, we can get a sense that every generation stands up on its own and moves through life with a moral sensibility that hopefully burns in the hearts, minds, and souls of those actors who would be recognized, like the Torah recognizes Noah or Abraham. But there was a machloket. There was a Talmudic disagreement. Is Noah righteous and above all others in his own generation and any generation righteous, l'shevach? Or if Noah had been alive in the age of Abraham, would he have been a plain no one? Would he have been just like every other person? And that's why the Torah qualifies it with bedorotav, in his generation. This kind of comparing Noah and Abraham always leads me to think about Noah versus other demuyot, personalities in the Torah. And one of the personalities that comes to mind for me in terms of a comparison between Noah and another is that between Noah and Moses. I guess I see both as shepherds. Moses in particular, a shepherd to the flocks of Jethro. Noah, a shepherd of all kinds of animal life. Caretaker of the great ark. A steward of the planet. Perhaps I'm hinting at where I come down on the side of Noah versus Moses. But of course, Moses had a great task before him and was tasked by God with a towering responsibility. So both offered their leadership and led their flocks in unique ways. Now, Moses was given that job to be Ro'eh Am Yisrael, the shepherd of the people Israel, because as it says in the Midrash Rabbah, in Shmot Rabbah, Exodus Rabbah, that Moses was shepherding his father's flock, his father's-in-law flock, and one of the sheep bolted. Moses follows the runaway animal all the way to a body of water where it stopped. Lapping up the water, Moses says compassionately, "Oh, if only I knew you were so thirsty. You must be exhausted from your running. Here, let me carry you." And Moses scooped up the animal and placed it on his shoulders and headed back to the flock. Said God at that moment, "This Moses, who so cares for just one of the sheep in this massive flock, he will be the right one to care for my child, Am Yisrael, my one people who needs a shepherd." And God gave him the job, seeing that in fact the way he treated the animal of his flock, he could become the leader necessary and needed and required for Am Yisrael to be led from Egypt through the wilderness to the promised land. Now Noah, we get no indication that he was a shepherd before he became the holiest zookeeper we know. But we do hear that he was a tzaddik. We hear he was a righteous soul. And so some of tzadkaniyot has to be that compassion and tenderness and caring for God's creatures is part and parcel to being a righteous soul on the face of the earth. He would be challenged to care for multiple species. A metaphor, not only for animal life, but for the variety of life in a world that needed to be reborn. Ele Toldot Noach. The parsha begins, these are what Noach's progeny look like. This is what Noach built. This is what Noach constructed. This is how Noach cared. This is how Noah tended his flock. And so we are granted the details of the story of the precision engineering that Noah must have known how to achieve. That topic for a different time. And if God saw, though, that he could with precision engineer the ark, then God knew in his heart that he might be able to precision engineer the care system that he would need to engage to keep every species of the earth alive in the ark. God singled him out for his good heart, his work ethic, his attention to detail, and his creating the systems, of his garnering resources, of his using them to preserve life. The book of Proverbs says, Yodea tzadik nefesh behemto. A righteous man knows the needs of his beast. A beautiful way to say, as Rashi does, what his beast requires, uvene beito tzrichim, and the members of his household really need. A tzaddik is someone who looks around and says, what is needed here? And applies his wisdom and brings resources to bear. And acts of tzedakah flow as contributions do as well. The Midrash about Noah shows us he was a matmid. He dedicated himself to the care for those animals and the preservation of life, and building the system that was necessary within the ark. Shazam farnes kol 12 chodesh, that every one of the 12 months, Noah was in the ark with the animals. He fed them, and he nourished each of them. Curious verb in that midrash, umefarnes. He didn't pay them. Does an animal need a paycheck? He gave them what they needed to prosper. He never told the children exactly to walk the giraffe when he wasn't prepared to walk the grizzly bear. He didn't tell them to clean the tiger's cage when he hadn't already swept out the lions. He didn't tell them to change the litter of the guinea pig until he himself changed the nesting of the birds who needed. Noah, he spent 12 months in that ark with his family, and together they learned how to feed animals and clean animals and make comfortable spaces for each of them. Their compassion flowed and growth occurred on that ark. When you will be sheltered in, kach lecha mikol machal, take every kind of food you need, asher yeachel, that will be eaten, ve'asafta elecha, take it unto you, v'haya lecha v'lahem le'ochla, and it shall be for you and your family, and for the animals in your care, food for when you need it most. They rationed, and they realized that they could be stewards of the animal kingdom and the saplings that they put into the slots so they could replant a world and create systems and ecosystems that would help human life flourish and create homes for animal life. What else did Noah do? The Midrash says that he was among the best communicators with the animals, who knew their hearts, who not only pressed figs and dried fruits for them or took from branches for the elephant's brush. Every type of individual animal got personal attention from Noah. He would go around and sing to those that needed singing to increase their song and their delight. He would dance with those who needed movement. He would embrace those lonely and afraid. He would be patient with the monkeys flying from the rafters and help the other animals not get too frustrated. Stretch his arms as if to soar with the birds so that they would be ready to inhabit the sky and prepare to retake the earth Yes, the rains were too hard for so many of the bird species. He was ready to be one to recreate systems and ecosystems, and was not stuck in his past or in the past of the world before him. He taught the animals independence despite their interdependence, and how to recapture themselves into the collective, to be part of something sheltered, yet to be connected to the wide expanse of creation after the flood. They would become individual species, part of the greater arrangement of the animal kingdom and the entire world. Noah was prepared to help God create and establish new systems for living that would sustain life, human flourishing, animals' habitats, rivers and ecosystems, all in balance. One family moving and dancing and flowing one with another. Have you ever seen film or video or pictures of a murmuration of starlings? I highly encourage you to use your Google at the right time for you and look it up. That's a collective noun for an amazing number of starlings. A wonderful collective noun, right? Murmuration of starlings. Perhaps you've seen it. Birds wheeling and banking through the sky, moving, sometimes like an infinity sign, like one great organism, each one with a connection to his or her own spirit, but collectively, like the soul life of the world. Noah delighted in the dove coming back with the olive leaf to say, I found my source of food. Thank you for providing me the sweets, but now I'm ready to go fend for myself. And Noah also delighted looking out over the side of the ark in the great murmuration of starlings and all of the wonders of the animal kingdom. I am sure. And Noah inspires just the same as Abraham or Moses does for me. Noah inspires me to connect more deeply to the great oneness of all life, to hope when storms rage, to our abilities to bring compassion into our stewardship of the world, our planet, animal kingdom, one another. And to engage the world as religious, responsible human beings, ready to engineer a more holy future. Shabbat Shalom.